Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay, because we're just going to start. I'm just going to bring Christian on board as well. So unmute and turn his video on. In fact, Christian, can you turn your video on?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me all right?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you okay. There we go. Can see you as well.
Okay.
So I'm hoping everybody can see us both, and I'm hoping my sound is a little bit better than last time. It's been a bit of a constant battle to get the lip sync working. So anyway, it's a long story. I might share it with you sometime. Anyway, Christian, how are you, mate?
I'm good. Thanks, Nick.
Good,
Yeah,
good,
I was just looking out my window. There's a few clouds out there. I went shooting this morning, actually, with a beautiful sunrise down here.
Great.
My wife actually, Jen, got me out of bed. She said, "Come on, I think it's going to be good." So, I was sort of like rolling around. It's about 5:30 in the morning. So anyway, got down there, got the Leica out and shot with I got the 90 to 280 on there at the moment, which I was doing a fair bit of that. Clouds, there's this amazing cloud in the distance that was really quite spectacular. So I was shooting that. But,
good stuff. Yeah,
it was a good start. Good start to the day.
I can see a familiar picture on the wall behind you there as well. That looks like something from Namibia.
Oh, yeah. yep, there is. That was our trip that we did together. That was an awesome trip. Actually, that was probably one of my most favorite trips that I've done. I think it was,
I should mention to all of our viewers that Christian and I go way back. We've been working together, doing shoots and workshops and trips for, blimey, it must be 10 years, I reckon. We've been to Namibia, obviously, and a few other places, Southeast Asia, around Australia. So I thought I'd start off doing this Q&A session with a relatively easy subject. Not saying you're easy, mate, but, because I've got a lot of context of Christian's background, so it makes it easier for me to answer questions, or ask questions and answer questions. So on the subject of questions, please feel free to ask questions. I'm just going to turn on my Q&A window, which if I can find it, there it is, so that I can see what questions come up. And I've also got a collection of Christian's images from older ones right the way through to current ones, and you'll see quite a different style emerge over the years. So we'll go through those, and I'll get Christian to talk a little bit about the thought process behind them. Let me see. We're going to talk a little bit about the shift also from medium format to SL2, and I'm already seeing some questions about that, so I'm going to hold off on answering that until we can sort of answer that more generally, if that's okay. And there's a question here from Ralph, just came in. With mirrorless cameras, do you need to cover the viewfinder when taking long exposures? I'll answer that one. That's a bit of a throwback to DSLR days when you used to get light coming in the viewfinder and it would affect the exposure. With electronic viewfinder cameras, no, because it's just a screen you're looking at. There's no light meter in there, so you don't have to worry about that. It's great. EVFs are just bee's knees as far as I'm concerned. They solve so many problems. All righty. So look, let's see. Another question coming in here. Peter, I might answer that one maybe by email because we did cover that thing about gesture a couple of weeks ago. And if we can, here we go. Here's a question quickly. If you could take one lens on a trip, Christian, what would it be?
I would have to be a 50 mil.
50 mil. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Not the 24 to 90 zoom.
Oh, look! You should have. I didn't think about that because I got the zoom lens.
I didn't say one focal length. I said one lens.
Yeah. Good point. Probably would be the 24 to 90 because it's such a versatile lens. And
there's nothing you can't do with it, is there? Really?
Yeah. In fact, when I got a kit to try before I bought my kit, I was thinking, no, maybe I won't buy that lens. I was sort of thinking, 24 to 90, and then you said to me, Christian, you should look seriously at that lens because that's super sharp and it's so versatile, especially for that urban stuff that I do. So after that recommendation, I took it out that afternoon and did some of that urban stuff, shooting from the car, and I just went, wow. I mean, this lens.
Good for that,
I can't even believe
you can frame it just how you want it, and I'm glad he does listen to me sometimes, and vice versa. All right, look, let's start looking at some pictures. So I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm rather hoping that this works well. So we should be able to see the first of the pictures. You should be able to see me and Christian next to this picture. So I can't actually see what you guys are all seeing directly. So I'm going to assume that that's working. So this is an older picture. I'd say it's what Christian would probably call a cheery picture, which is something he may have moved past. But Christian, tell us a little bit about this picture and the significance of it for your work and your business.
Well, it was an image that my wife made me take, actually. So we were out one afternoon. There's a Bunker Bay down south, and she loves to tell me what to do. In lots of, but in a nice way. And she said, "Christian, you've got to take this photo. This is beautiful. I love this photo." And I was looking, I was going, "No way, I'm not taking that. That's awful. It's cheesy." She goes, "Christian, take the photo." So I took the photo, edited it up. I mean, it was shot, I don't know how many years ago now. It must be 18 years old, maybe 15 to 18 years old. And you can see there's a beautiful big dark area there where the polarizing effect
in here.
But it was shot on the Fuji GX617 panoramic camera. So I was using a polarizer a lot in those days. You couldn't really tell where the effect was because you couldn't see. There was no viewfinder. You couldn't see through the lens. It was just a little viewfinder on top that you looked at. And so I was just guessing where that polarized effect would be. And but anyway, it became one of our biggest sellers. And we still sell it today. I still hate it today when people spend money, and I kind of cringe. But
well, it's part of the business, isn't it? It's a significant image because it's a useful photograph, I think it's fair to say. So it's made you a lot of money. Yes. That leads me to the next one. Whoops, I've got the wrong screen up. Got to click on here, fumbling around a little bit. So completely different subject, completely different color tones, but I'm going to flick between two pictures here and tell me why you've done this from this. What was the reasoning behind this? Because I know this was another very successful picture in your gallery.
Yeah, this is probably our biggest selling photo of all time, and I'm not sure how much turnover we've made on this, but going back quite a few years, I did do some sums, and it must be up to around $500,000 worth of sales on that one photo. Yeah, and it was
on the same camera, shot on
the Fuji GX617. Probably about 15 years ago. Shot at a place called Bogong in Victoria, and so this is going back early Photoshop. So I thought, I'm just going to drop all the other colors out, set for the oranges and the yellows, and then I'm going to bring them all to red and see what it looks like, and that's roughly what came out. So the girls in the gallery loved it. We put one in, and it sold, and then sold another one, and it would just keep selling. It got to a point where this was our most it was the image that lived in the gallery permanently, and we actually had multiple copies out the back. So if we sold one, we just put one straight back.
Really. Yeah, because I've seen this on the wall. I mean, it's like huge, maybe 2 meters wide, and it actually looks fantastic. I mean, I know you again, you don't particularly like this picture on a personal level, but you love it from the point of view of it helping feed hungry mouths and drive the business along.
Yeah, and look, it's got beautiful Leica colours all over it, hasn't it?
All right, I've got a question here from Zaki. With the digital editing like Lightroom, which has excellent filter tools, do you still use ND filters when you're shooting these days? No, you don't. Or do you use the filters in Lightroom or Capture One more often?
I use pretty much the filters in. I don't actually use Lightroom. As you know, Nick, I've never been a Lightroom user. I was always using Capture One up until recently, but I'm not using Capture One at the moment. I'm using Camera Raw. Look, most of the time I'm using. I mean, you get so much dynamic range out of your shots these days. You almost don't need to worry about anything like that. You can recover everything, or your highlights and shadows quite well. But I will back it and then just overlay 2 shots in Photoshop and then and blend them together. So that's pretty much NDs. I haven't used NDs for ages since my brother stole them off me. I've done no, but they ended up he ended up with 2 sets, and had none. So, but yeah, no, I would never use an ND filter.
I think we'll be talking a bit more about Photoshop very soon, because obviously there comes a point in your career where Photoshop started to become quite a significant tool in your bag of tricks, which there's already a couple of questions around that. Ludwig wants to know if the wide angle shots are stitched. No, there's a Fuji 6x17 camera which shoots film in this format. So it's already stitched in a sense. Now, Christian and I are both doing a lot of stitching, because the format, of course, is now that 4:3 format. So none of these images are stitched. Although I think you did do some stitching earlier with your previous digital cameras when you went away from the film. Is that right?
Yeah. I've always, stitching I did quite a lot of in the past. I don't do as much these days, because I find that I've got enough resolution with most of the cameras I've been using to do whatever I want. But look, if I do, and I don't do so many panoramics anymore, but yeah, like if I think that something deserves a panoramic, then I'll stitch a couple together to create that, as opposed to cropping
All right.
single caption.
We'll move on to some more traditional landscape pictures. I did a talk, which you will have heard before, Christian, many times, called Essence of Landscape. And Christian and I used to do these workshops in WA and all around the country. And I used to start the weekend by doing this talk about the thought process behind the landscape pictures, which is what I did last Friday. So this is one of Christian's pictures from one of the Kimberley workshops we did, I believe. And one of the questions I've always wondered about this is you seem very happy to let your sky go to white. Could you just talk us through that a little bit?
Well, this was actually, this one was shot on a mine site. Actually, Nick, I was doing I was some work with my brother, and we the mining camps just off to the left. This was yeah, no, not on the workshop. It was at the Hammersley Ranges in the Pilbara, and it was a Rio Tinto site. But we went up this morning just to walk up the hill to see what was on the other side, and this is what was there. It was a beautiful scene. So I was shooting, the sun was coming, I was shooting straight towards the light. This is, I think, one of the first shots when I thought, hey, it doesn't matter if you haven't got detail in the sky, because this was shot in medium format, and I did try to go in post and try and bring some detail back into that sky. But as I did that, it lost the, like you said, the essence. It lost that whole feeling of wow, bright light. And that's when I thought, hey, you don't need to have detail in the sky all the time. It's more. I'm just going to
point out, because I put this picture clumsily on a white background, the image is in fact symmetrical in the middle. So the top of the image is round about where my mouse is now. But of course, it's blending into the background a bit, which does change it slightly. But yeah, I remember you pointing this out in a workshop and saying you don't need to have detail in the sky if it adds something to the mood.
It actually takes away from it, from the feeling when you try to put detail back in there.
Question from David Shear. How do you do long exposures if you don't use NDs, Christian?
I just wait until it gets darker.
That's exactly the answer I was expecting. I think it's fair to say that if it's dark, you don't need a filter, but if it's not dark, then the good old 10-stop ND filter is a really useful tool to have.
Yeah, funny about that, the NDs, because that 10-stop, because I've had one, going back years, but I haven't used one for a really long time. And then just recently, when I got the new Leica kit, I had to get a new filter, 82mm for the lenses, and I was going, because I think I spoke to you, Nick. I said, well, what ND do you use? And you said you use a Hoya ND. And I went, okay. I was like, Hoya, aren't they the cheapo ones? So I did some research online, because I had a B&W, and I thought the B&W was the greatest filter out. And I thought, but it gave me this horrendous color cast, which I thought, I thought they all did. And then I read this review, and it said it's actually one of the least sharp ones. And I always told people when I was doing workshops, if you're doing your ND, make sure you take it off, take a shot of the rocks or whatever, the detail first, and then put your ND on, and then take another shot, because you lose a lot of sharpness, and you do lose some because of possible vibration and whatever. But I bought that Hoya, and same as what you've got, and I used it, and I was going, no color cast, and it's sharp. So it's like all these years I've been using this B&W.
I think good old 10-stop ND filter is almost one of those sort of must-have filters. So I'm going to move along to the next picture, because we've got a lot of things to go through. So if you see my mouse coming in the picture, it's because I've got to trigger the slideshow so I can go to the next picture. Now I'm going to make a comment on this picture because I was horrified when I saw this image, and I accused Christian of being way too cheerful and mucking around with the skies, and he came back and put me firmly in my place. Now, what was that all about?
Yeah, well, it actually is the color that it actually was, and that was just one of those crazy storms. This is down in Dunsborough where I live, and that Bay Area is usually completely calm and beautiful, but there was this massive storm was coming through, and this was a long exposure. The water was coming right up around the boat there, which it never does. Yeah, it was just a monstrous, huge gale that was blowing. You can see the triggers going crazy, but I just like the colours in this, and this became a limited edition photograph that I did in the gallery as a special print offer. So it's a way of sort of generating turnover with your images by selling them at a smaller amount at a smaller price, and making them really exclusive. And so if you're trying to raise some money, I've done it quite a few times now. It's for those that are looking to raise a bit of money, they want to buy a new camera or something. If you've got a social following, you can say, look, up just for this, for 1 month, I've got this special offer on this print, blah blah blah. And we did that with this one. I think we sold them. They were like a 30 by 40 sort of size, and managed to sell like 50 prints at about $300 each.
Really? That's astonishing. Yeah.
So and that's all done in a really short period of time. So
that's great.
Different ways of this is all the little tricks that we've had in the gallery over the years. Trying to get people interested in buying things.
That's fantastic, because prints are hard to sell. I mean, there's not very many people in the country successfully selling photographic prints. I can think of 2 or 3 people apart from yourself. But beyond that, there's a lot of people trying, maybe 3 or 4 people I can think of. But you seem to have got it down pat and have been doing so for quite a few years. So congratulations in that side of things. So I'm going to move on to the next picture. This is, now there's something about this picture which I didn't pick up when I first saw it. And this does get us into somewhat more controversial areas. So just tell me about the sky in this picture.
Yeah, well, that sky was somewhere else. Where was it? I don't remember. And it's been squished and pushed and pulled and all sorts of stuff. But this was in the workshop that you and I did. I think it was our first Home Valley workshop up in Kimberley. Yeah. And so we got there, and it was a pretty boring sunrise, and the light was really flat. So I photographed this tree early in the morning, and the whole idea of this image was to basically show people how you can cut out a complex shape, put in a new sky, and then also use Photoshop to make it look like there's actually some sunlight coming in and stuff. This is going back in its early days, and it's early Photoshop, so it's a little bit raw and ready. But
I remember an absolute classic quote from that trip when we were driving towards where we were staying at Home Valley, and we were looking at this blue sky. And I was saying, oh, crikey, I hope we get some clouds. And anybody who knows me will know I have a thing about clouds and everything. And it was just this flat blue sky, which is really difficult to work with. And I said, I hope we get some clouds building up. And Christian said, I don't care. I have all the clouds I need with me on my hard drive.
Yeah, I know.
But, but the thing is, you've got to do it well. None of these pictures you would ever know that. And that does open up certain questions, which no doubt we'll get in a sec. And I'm going to answer that in advance by saying it's all about the artist's vision, and it's all about the artist owning it. Like, nobody's pretending that this was like that. That Christian will happily admit that this guy was added in for artistic effect. So as long as you're honest about your work, I think all things are fair. But anyway, we'll see if we get any questions. I've got a couple of other questions. Now I'm getting a lot of questions, and I can probably only answer every so often. So if your question has been asked and gone, I apologize for that. I'm doing the best I can to keep the thing rolling and also answer the questions. Now, let's see, what would the next one would be good to answer? Okay, I'm going to do this one. Christian, have you ever done, and I presume you mean this image, this one in monochrome, black and white. Have you looked at that one in black and white?
No, but I do have a tree coming up, I think, later in the slideshow.
Oh, yes, all right, well, not this one. So let's go to the next image. And no, not that one. Why did we put that one in? Oh, I know, this is heading towards your more muted colors. Now, we started with some fairly intense colors, but I think your vision in the Pilbara at this sort of time of day is very much those muted sort of earthy tones rather than more cheerful colors. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, look, I've you go through phases. When you first start out, your images are all fairly pure, and because you don't really know your editing, you don't know processing so well, and then you get to a point where you know a certain amount, and then you go, oh, I've got all this power. Then you start abusing that power, and I think everyone that's got into Photoshop has abused it at some stage in their career, and except for you, though, Nick. I think you've always been pretty pure and pretty honest to because what you shoot, you shoot documentary, and I've tried to corrupt you on the occasions, and haven't managed, but you've always resisted, which has been good for you. But yeah, my tastes are sort of coming around to, and this is kind of more like my early days, my early photographs, because there is still a bit of post-production that's gone into this, but I've tried to make it look more realistic, but this was a one-of-one image I created for a friend of mine who is a very it's a guy who's got everything, and I was like, well, what can I get him? Because he's got everything, he can get anything he wants, but he can't get this photo, and he's the only one that owns it. So I gave it to him, and
one of one.
Well,
that's pretty good. That is pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let me see. Now this one is I put this. Well, you sent this one too, but I've included it because I find that there's something astonishingly still about this photograph. I can almost hear the lack of noise when you were stood there. If that makes sense. It's got that.
Really that's exactly how it was when I was there.
Right.
Little beach down near Albany, and this particular morning there was no one around. I was the only person. There was not. There was a really small swell, no wind, and it was just like that. It was perfect, and it was shot before the sun came up, obviously, so it's got that nice twilight sort of light, and shot on medium format not long ago actually. But there's something about it I like it as well. I think it's just the colours. Obviously, you got your teals and your oranges. There, a little bit of purple at the top, and it is quite relaxing.
What angle of view is this? What lens would that have been equivalent?
It was a 28 mil, but 28 mil.
Okay, so that's super wide.
Yep. On the medium format, and then I've cropped it to a like a 2-to-1 ratio, which I can see. Really like at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got a ratio. It's not 2-to-1. It's actually see what happens is there was a guy who did this book, and I think it was called Horizons. I think. Anyway, he took photographs, and all his horizons are exactly the same height all the way through. But I really loved the ratio that he was shooting. It was close to a 2-to-1, but I ended up measuring it, and then I measured it, and then made that ratio the ratio that I used. So it's like 30 to 16.5 or something like that. That's what it turned out to.
That's pretty close to 16:9, which is the size of the screens that most people will be looking at, but not quite the same. So that's interesting. One of the questions I often get asked is about cropping, and I've always said an image will sort of tell you what shape to crop it to, or you can go with a consistent look and style, which I guess is what you're talking about, is getting some consistency. And rather than looking at a picture and second guessing it afterwards, you can shoot to that shape. Is that the way you're working at the moment?
Yeah, pretty much. Look, sometimes you look at like this morning, classic example, there was a beautiful cloud, but it was quite close to the horizon, and there was not much above it. So I was thinking, when I was shooting, I was zooming in a little bit, trying to eliminate a lot of that sky. That was just too much headroom. But then I also knew that I would crop it in post. There's too much foreground, or there might be too much sky. So I look at the scene, and I decide then what I need to include on the outsides. But the top and the bottom will be decided in post. And like you said, and an image will tell you. And sometimes you'll crop an image like this, and then all of a sudden it feels like it hasn't got enough space. It's too tight. This one worked quite well.
Getting a few questions from people about which camera and lens is used. Sometimes memory will fail us, but also it's important to make the point that just because a lens is used on a particular camera, that particular lens focal length may not relate to a different format. It's a bit complicated. So this one was a 28mm on a medium format camera, which is about the same as what would that be? About 20 mils on a normal full frame camera. I don't know exactly. It's just wide. You know, and I know people like this feedback because it gives them an idea of what gear was used to get that particular look. So I'll try and interpret which cameras and which lenses were used. But let's just say this was a super wide. Whatever super wide is on your camera, this would be a shot that you could take on that camera. This is it's probably the same lens from a guess. Is that right?
Yep, same lens, same camera, same day even.
Oh, right. Okay.
The only difference is the sky was from somewhere else.
Here we go.
But I do like this shot. It was, and someone said, "Wow, your beaches are so tidy," and they are. But it was pretty tidy, full stop. But I took a couple little bits of shell and weed out that were distracting. But I do like this image because of the light and the pristineness of it. And what I wanted to portray was, a little beach down there. All that whole south coast of Western Australia is so spectacular, it's so beautiful. I just wanted to,
I can attest to that.
To show that, show that pristine nature of that area. So.
I think it's fair to point out that we're looking at images on the screen. If you're looking at an iPad, they're probably this big. If you're on an iMac or something, it's like this big. These images are 30, 40, 50, 60 inches wide or bigger in Christian's gallery. And there's an enormous difference in the experience of viewing a big print that's beautifully made compared to a picture on a screen. I don't know what you think, Christian, but I don't see an image on a screen as a photograph yet. It's got to be printed to show its full glory. And the bigger, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And these sorts of images lend themselves really, really well to super high quality, large format printing. And that leads me to two questions which came up consecutively from different people. Do you ever use focus stacking for these sorts of images to get that maximum sharpness?
Yes, I do. With any camera I'm using, I always make sure I focus in different areas. And so good now with the SL2 because I can just tap the screen, and I know that that has been in other cameras for a while, but it's the first time I've had it in a camera that I own. So I get there now. I got the live view. I'm looking at the scene. If I was going to shoot this scene with my Leica, I would tap on the foreground and on the sand in front, tap on that rock, and then I would tap on the background, that hill in the background, and that would be my 3 points. And then I would look at each one in post and just see if I've nailed the hyperfocal distance or not, or if I haven't, then I'll combine some together.
So you'd tap the focus point on the back to focus like down here. And then you tap and focus here. And
on the rock first.
That gives you two shots that's focused in different places, and then you can blend the sharpest parts of each picture together to give you like infinite depth of field. That's essentially what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll use Helicon focus probably to combine them. But what I've found, even with medium format, this was 80 megapixels, this shot, I found that sometimes I nail the hyperfocal distance, and even on medium format, I've got awesome depth of field all the way through, so I don't need to do any focus stacking. So a lot of the time I'll do it and then just check to see. And with the Leica, I'm getting enough depth of field. I'm shooting f8, and I'm still getting enough depth of field in the shots to do everything I want to do. It's great.
Move along a little bit because we're making progress here. This is Tasmania. I'd say this was Cradle Mountain. Now there should have been a bright red person stood here, I believe, which would have been me in a big red coat. And there was a discussion about removing a person from the scene. And you quite like the red spot, but now why did you take me out? I feel slightly.
Well, it was. This is at Cradle Mountain. This is a workshop Nick and I did together in Tassie, and just basically near that tree on the left hand side of the hut, there was Nick in a red jacket, and he looked great because the pose was good, and it gave scale, and it was the only bright bit of color in the whole thing.
This is a color picture, I need to point out. It's not a black and white image. This is actually color.
Yeah, so it was really, I thought that just having a person adds something to a photograph. I think it adds scale for starters, but it makes you question, who that person is, what they're doing. And that's something that adds to the story in my mind. But a funny thing we find in the galleries is people, if they see a scene, a landscape scene, they don't really want to see another person in it. so we find that, well, I've got some other shots with people in them, and they generally ask us if we can take the person out. So the girl said to me, just take, no, you can't have Nick there. You've got to take him out. So, so out he went.
Okay, fair enough. Couple of questions about that. So Bill would like to know, given the freedom you allow yourself with Photoshop, do you call yourself a photographer, an image maker, a photographer artist, or any other title? All right, there's a good one.
Phew. All of the above, probably.
Yeah.
Look, I think I always think of myself as a photographer, because I think photographers are still artists. So we don't need to say I'm an artist, because I'm an artist that works with a camera and I work in photography. So I don't think we need to sort of say that we're something else, because I love photography and I always want to be known as a photographer. I mean, I'd love to be an artist, but if I was to consider myself an artist, I would probably be more likely to be painting at the same time, or doing some other sort of art as opposed to photography.
Well,
so
we'll be coming to some of those pictures shortly that are definitely more into the art side. So let's press on with that, because I want to make sure that we do talk more. Can I just flick through a couple, because we are taking longer than I was expecting, because I want to get to, well, here's another one, which is definitely a change of mood dramatically into a lot darker. And there's this picture and a couple of other ones are very much a different style to what you normally do. So just a couple of comments on this one, and then we'll move on to the next few pictures.
Well, this one I really like, because what this was actually a focus stack image, and this is down at some sand dunes down near Esperance. And what was happening, it was late afternoon, and there was broken cloud that was coming across, and it was light was hitting in different places at different times. So as I was shooting this, I was noticing this happening. It was happening quite quickly. So I did my focus stacks, but then I was focusing on different areas and waiting for the light to hit those areas, and then I'd shoot them again. So you can see there's 3 different areas of light, and they're all natural. That's not Photoshop at all. Even the one in the background, and they look like spotlights. They look like you've got out there with your flashlight, and you've tried to create this light. It was taken in the afternoon. It was probably at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock. So it wasn't really dark and late.
Super wide lens again.
Yes. Yep. 28 mil.
28 mil again.
It has. I think it. I don't know if it's been cropped. No, I don't think it is. But anyway, I obviously the sky was quite dark already, so I changed it to black and white, and then started to really darken down areas to create that mood, to make it look like it was later than it was. But I love that shot. It's still one of my favorites.
Let me just clarify that. So there's 2 or 3 different pictures taken from the same position without moving anything, and in the different each shot, the light's in a different place. So it's a composite of the same view, but with light in different places, which is not really much different to doing a long exposure, except that the light would tend to merge from one place to another. So you're showing almost an accumulation of the quality of the light. I think this is very clever. I remember when you first showed me this, I thought, you know what, that's a really interesting idea. So it does make an interesting point that you don't have to capture a picture in a single frame. You can try and capture the essence of a place by accumulating the shots. And I think that's something that people could consider. And I spoke about this last week. There was also, Stuart Westmore says that 28 mil is the equivalent to 21 millimeters on full frame. So there we go. 21
good
mil, super wide.
Thanks, Stuart.
Question from, actually, I'm going to go to the next couple of pictures and we'll come back to questions in a bit. Okay, so this one and this one. Tell me, totally different subjects, but tell me a little bit about this figure. And if you look closely, you'll see a person lying on the sand right there. So there's a story behind these 2 pictures.
Yeah, so this is a mate of mine, Ian Much. He's an artist. So he does murals, and these little characters are his sort of little figures that he creates, these little people that he draws. And so he does all sorts of stuff, but he had come up with this idea. He said he'd love to do a beach mural, and I said, and he said, would you, could you come down and help me and get some photos of it? So this one was called Beach Blanket. It's basically, it's supposed to be about this guy's asleep in bed, and the beach, the water coming up is his doona. And but yeah, it works so well because it's about the scale. This was shot with a drone with a Phantom 4 Pro, and at a place called Bunker Bay, where we live. And it took a while to draw this, but he marked it all out using his drone, which was pretty cool. So he could actually
ask
see
about that. That's tricky.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had his screen, and he had I probably shouldn't give away his secrets, but he had a bit of clear plastic, which had the illustration on there that he had drawn, and he just put his drone up, had it hovering at one spot, and then he just walked along and marked out the lines with his feet, and then we went around afterwards with a rake and a shovel and just
that's really clever. I was wondering how he did that, because it's spot on the shape, it really is. And then the little I pressed the wrong button, but I click here, and then this one. So this is the same character, isn't it?
Yeah, same sort of guy. Yeah. This was a building in Dunsborough that was being demolished. So he found out about it, and he said, "Look, I want to get some photos of it. I want to do the mural." So he did this the same day it got demolished. So he did a quick sketch up, and I was there to photograph it as the thing was pushing it. That wall was actually coming down as I took that photo. The sky has been removed, and also some of the distracting elements to the left of the building. There was other houses, and so I just took them all out, put in a new background, and then a new sky, and then created that and used a teal and orange LUT to give it a bit more cinematic sort of feel.
Okay, so that's a definite change of pace there. And then we get to, you did a lot of aerial stuff. I'm just going to go through a few samples, because these are, correct me if I'm wrong, these are Iceland, is that right?
Yep, that's Iceland.
Yep. Okay, so these are drone pictures, or are they Cessna pictures, a drone picture?
That's a drone. The first one was shot with Cessna. This one, that's a Cessna. The other one was a drone. It's a tailings dam near Cape.
Then we've got this, and this is back to Australia. This is Kalgoorlie, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, just south of Kalgoorlie, a place called Lake Lefroy, and that's what's his name? Bertinsky went out and took some photos there.
Yeah.
And then I was looking on his website one time, looking at his aerials, and I saw this place. Oh, wow, that looks like an alien world. What is that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then he said Lake Lefroy, WA, and I went, hang on, is that Washington or? Yeah. And then I looked up Lake Lefroy, WA, and I didn't realize it was in my backyard.
Yeah.
And that it's basically a gold mine being done in a salt lake, and it's a massive area, and there's all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, because there's quite a few pictures of this sort of genre that people are doing at the moment. They're sort of aerial abstracts. This up in the Gulf, maybe?
Yeah, that's up near Wyndham. So up in the Kimberley.
Okay,
so one of the rivers that feeds into the Gulf.
Yeah, this is on, and what camera? Was this on the medium format again?
No, that was actually shot on the Sigma.
The little Sigma. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the DP2, I think.
Of course,
which
now
I do love.
Use the SL2 for this now, no doubt.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I haven't been able to get into a plane yet and use the SL2 for aerials, but I think it'd be fantastic. And I'll
find it very effective for that because of the stabilizer on board, which really works. Great question on that subject. Question from Gordon. Do you miss the medium format? Do you shoot with both? I believe you don't shoot with both.
No, I sold the medium format, or kind of sold it. Anyway, it's gone. I don't miss it at all. I mean, I spent 12 years using it, and the quality is amazing. The resolution's out of this world. But then all the other cameras, and mine was quite old now, but all the other cameras have been catching up. And for me now, it's more about convenience as opposed to that, lugging all that heavy gear around. I find now that with the Leica kit, I'm more inclined to take it, hang it over my shoulder, and go out and shoot with it. Whereas you just don't do that. And I can get this thing focused. I can get it sharp. And it's not to say that you can't get the medium format cameras sharp. It's just much harder, and you've got to work harder for your shots.
Yeah.
Also, it comes down to size of prints that you need to make. Not everyone
by mistake. This is another area, I believe. I just pressed the button by mistake and flicked pictures. I was sorry.
Oh, that's good.
But this is another aerial, and this looks like one of Andrew Campbell's Starscapes. But it's looking down on another salt lake, and I believe, and is that right? And these are birds flying past. So this is astonishingly arty or painterly. Not that I'm surprised, don't get me wrong. This is quite astonishing, and it takes a while to actually work out what you're looking at here.
Yeah, well, you can see basically a waste processing facility not far from home, and this is one of the tailings dams they've got. So there's all sorts of stuff going in there. I don't know what it is. It looks kind of toxic, but the colours have been enhanced. Obviously, when I photographed it, it was an overcast day, so the ponds were a little bit reflective from the sky, so you didn't get that clarity. So, but once you go into post, I mean, I think I edited this one in Capture One and just hit the auto button, and it just crunches that contrast, and all of a sudden it just pops. You know, then I worked a little bit on the blues there and the reds, and the birds are real. That's one thing I'm proud of, is that they actually flew through as I was flying there. And took quite a few shots, and that was the one where they just happened to be in the right spot at the right time.
They just they really do.
Yeah.
All right.
And like when I do my editing, I'd make sure I put a lot of light into the middle and less to the outside. So, it's all about where you position, where you add that extra light and where you hold it back. That makes a difference.
So this is also this is up in the north of WA, is that right?
Yeah. It's one of my first aerial shots, actually. That was taken about 10 or 11 years ago. And there was the first aerial shoot I'd done with a Cessna, and there's a big salt farm up there, and this is part of that. It was a mangrove system that's obviously been flooded and turned into this big salt farm. And the colours are amazing, incredible colours up there. So yes, it's an older one, but I've been doing aerials for a long time, and I do love doing them, and they're very addictive, as you know.
David Glazebrook says, a surreal religious experience viewing this image. I must just go back to that one just to gaze in awe. Thanks, David.
Oh, yeah.
A surreal religion.
Okay,
you can quote him on that one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Then we've got another question here. Somebody was Kim Gelvin was asking, what kind of drone do you trust carrying your camera so high? It's called a Cessna 210, and it's not a drone.
Yeah, that's right. yeah. My other little drone is just a Phantom 4 Pro, which has got a camera on it. But ultimately, I'd love to do it in Cessnas, because you can get around. You're actually up there. You're looking down. It's much easier to look off into the distance and see, oh, look, there's a spot over there. Let's fly into that. Yeah. But there is a cost that comes with that.
Yeah. And also you can go higher, which is important, because the 400 feet limit is really not very high at all. And you'll find that you don't get that flattened perspective. So 5,000 feet with a standard lens or whatever can be much, much better in some respects. So, all right.
Just that extra
resolution. I want to get to these. I've got to talk about this one. You sent me this one specially. Because this is an image that Christian won a gold with distinction, I believe, at the Uppers. Was this the image in the set?
Yeah.
You won the overall landscape photographer of the year.
No, I didn't win that year. That was I think it was the year before or something. Okay. But it was my first entry into the awards, in the national awards, and the first gold I got. And it was fantastic. But this shot was shot way back when on a Canon, actually 1DS Mark II. And with a 400mm lens, through the rain, out of the car window. Because as you know, Nick, I don't like to get out of the car too much. I'm a lazy boy.
We call you Edward Weston. Anything more than 500 meters from the car is not photogenic.
That's right.
Drive-by shooting. The reason I'm chuckling about this is because I honestly don't get why so many other people love this picture. I'm clearly in the wrong here because I'm in a massive minority, but a lot of other people just think this is one of your finest photographs. So I am so missing something. It's so look, I love the sort of the tonality, the painterly look to it too. But and when you told me you'd shot it out the window of the car in the rain, I just thought, oh my God, I'm just too, I'm too left brain. I'm too, too technically, and you're just being all freeform and going, that looks awesome. So it just goes to show that there's no rights and wrongs in photography. I think, it works, and how you got there isn't necessarily so important.
Yeah, right. I think if I was a painter, I would like to paint an image that looked like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Maybe this is the image that when you're winning portfolio. Is that the one?
This one, no. Well, yes, it might have been. It was in something.
He's won so many awards. He can't remember which pictures and which award. I mean, come on.
Not that many. Not that many. But the good story behind this one is, I'm not sure if many people listening know Peter Eastway and Tony Hewitt, a couple of mates of mine, both excellent Australian photographers. But we were up at Shark Bay when the news came through that Peter Eastway had just won the New South Wales Landscape Photographer of the Year, and Tony Hewitt the week before had won West Australian landscape photographer of the year. And they both, after the phone call Pete got, because we're all there together, they turned around to me and said, "Oh, Christian, so what? Oh, Pete's won. I've done WA. What have you done, Chris?" And I said, "Oh, there was this one photo that I entered into a competition just the other week. That's right. I won the first prize in that. It was an art award. And what was it? Oh, the first prize was $10,000. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Take that.
Steady on.
Was,
who got the last laugh there?
Yeah, this was the image, and it was the judge was the curator of the WA Museum.
Yeah.
Art gallery. Sorry, WA Art Gallery.
I'm going to flick through a couple of landscape pictures here, unfortunately, because we are sort of pressing on. Because I really want to talk about the sorry to skip them. I know people are going to be disappointed, but I really want to talk about these series of pictures, because for the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes, there's a very different shift in your palette, shall we say, and your way of seeing. And these images have caused quite a few conversations over the last couple of years. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the thinking behind some of these pictures.
Yeah, well, I started to look at the images in that new topographics exhibition, and particularly the work of Stephen Shaw. And I really liked that kind of nostalgic feel that he captured. And he said, someone said to him, "Oh, how come your images have this nostalgic look about them?" And he said, "Well, they're not. I just shot them way back when, and now you're looking at them, 40 years later, and of course they look nostalgic." So, I really love that look, that kind of whole washed out American vibe that you saw back then, and just these banal urban scenes. And it all came about by meeting a guy who was a curator of a altered landscape museum, basically, in Reno, Nevada, a guy named Bill Fox, and he shifted my whole mindset on photography and what was a good photograph. And I always thought a good photograph was something that had been photoshopped to within an inch of its life. It had to have this amazing light, and it had to be perfect, and it had to be this waterfall coming down from the sky. And then he said to me, no, it needs to be, you need to show me something that can't be seen. And that was the one thing that has stuck to me to this day, and it's probably why my images have changed so much, is because I'm looking at a story now, and I'm looking at an idea. But beyond that, I've just found I like that aesthetic. I like this washed out look, this the blue, the cyan skies with the fluffy white clouds. It's just such a nice, refreshing way for me to look at my work, and I'm kind of hooked on it now.
There's a few.
I would do this, but I do this. I mean, this image, the Walmart truck, is my all-time favorite. That and the sheep image that was on earlier. This one is I'm the most proud of all my photos, and I know that not everyone gets it, but for me, this is.
Oh, you're getting some rave reviews here, mate. Rave reviews. Jason Keeley says the Walmart truck is just amazing. It optimizes it. I think it means epitomizes America. Optimizes America. Even in the middle of nowhere, you can't escape capitalism and corporate America. Bang.
Yeah.
And then he's got even done another question. He's going yes. So Richard Bowden wants to know, how do you get that washed out look? By reducing saturation or how? But you don't have to give away your trade secrets. Just
no, that's right. I'm happy to give it away. It's really simple. Because when you shoot this, normally you would have the blue skies would be really quite blue and rich. So what I do is I'll usually go in and use a LUT, like it's lookup tables in Photoshop, adjustment layers. I usually choose the teal and orange one, because the teal and orange gives the sky, the blues a more kind of greeny look, and not so purpley. So that's the start. And then I might do one or two of those, and then the top adjustment layer, LUT, it's the same one, just duplicated a second time, Command J. And the top one, I'd then change the blend mode to screen. And what that does, it lightens everything up. It takes all the contrast out of all the shadow areas and all that sort of stuff. But it's usually too strong, and then you just pull it back. And then you use the adjustment layer underneath to adjust the color. So one of them will make it lighter or darker, and the other one will
I can just hear like 50 people going, I have no idea what he just said.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in Photoshop which is really very, very obscure. And when you delve down into that, you can get some astonishing results. It gives you some amazing control. So, sorry, my phone's going off in the background. That's very unprofessional. So yes, well, I've had 2 or 3 people go, that's really awesome. So I'm going to move on a little bit to the next picture. Same sort of style with these. Now these are, this one and this one are both hang on a sec. No, don't touch that. What's this? My phone was ringing in the background, and I've actually connected this entire webinar to the phone for the
Oh, really?
So don't touch that phone. So just quickly on these 2 pictures, and then we'll get to some more questions.
Yeah, I love airplanes. They've always been my my thing. And if I could just shoot airplanes for the rest of my life, I would do that, because they're just so beautiful. I think they're just such amazing creations. But these ones are done the same way as the Walmart truck with the LUTs and just bringing out all that contrast. I shot them on a fairly light overcast day, so there wasn't much contrast anyway. But it's really nice to photograph on really contrasty days and then pull all that contrast out in post. But the idea is you want to pull that contrast out of the mid-tones as much as you can, and so the shadows as well. But the deep darkest areas you want to bring back, so you can use like luminosity masking to do that. So you look at the lines on this helicopter, the darkest black areas are still quite dark, so you just want to select.
Yes, you've still got a black, so you've lifted like the mid-tones dramatically, but you've still left contrast with these blacks in here, I can see.
Yeah,
that leads me to a question by Neville Porter in New Zealand. He wants to know about using the SL2, because I know Neville shoots S system, which is the medium format Leica. He wants to know how malleable the files from the SL2 are, and that's exactly what you're talking about here. How much sort of elasticity do you have in those files when you're doing your post-processing?
Heaps, and it's so like I've been going out and bracketing and doing all that, and just okay, right. And I've done a couple that really underexposed just for the sky, and I thought, let me just pull this out and see what happens. So I was pulling back so much shadow detail in the raw files that it made me think, you know what, I'm not gonna worry about shooting to the right, because I couldn't see any noise, I couldn't see any problems with the file at all. So I'm just going to underexpose more often these days when I go out and shoot, and I'm just going to pull that back in post, because it works, and I couldn't see any issues with the files. So obviously, you still want to get a perfect exposure, but sometimes when there's massive dynamic range that's outside of your control, you can either bracket or you can try and recover that in post. But I found that, the shadow recovery is great, and the files are just as good as anything else I've used, or better.
Good stuff.
And they also capture. I said to you the other day, it captures color differently. SL2.
Yeah, you did mention that. That's an interesting point that you make, because Leica is known for a subtly different color. And could you put your finger on what that is? I find it very difficult to articulate it, but it's definitely there.
It's kind of cleaner, maybe. I don't know. It just seems to. It's not like it's got a color cast or anything. It's just different. And when you see the files, proper files, from a really good shot, there's just so much clarity in there. Maybe it's because I've been using older gear. I didn't realize how technology has improved. Probably part
All right. I'm going to move. Okay, so the last we'll go through these quickly. I wanted to talk more about them, but we're getting to almost to the hour, which is amazing how quickly this has gone. It's astonishing. But this picture started you off on another track with your banal urban series, and this is in the Pilbara, am I right?
Yeah. This is the morning after I had the conversation with Bill Fox when he said, "Show me something that can't be
your
seen."
epiphany.
So I went, So this was the morning everyone else slept in, and I got up and I just drove around. And this was my first kind of shot where I thought, it doesn't matter if there's not a beautiful sky. It doesn't matter if I haven't got beautiful light. Look at what this image is telling you. It's talking about what this area is, where it's quite dodgy. The Coca-Cola sign is so faded. It's obviously somewhere that's really hot. You've got 4 air conditioners there that are all trying to keep the place cool. You got everything looks bleached, and the sign is completely, it's just dodgy. And you go, wow, the Universal Chinese Restaurant. Not so sure if I'd eat there. Although Tony Hewitt did, he actually went and
Might be the only place you could eat around there. You never know. Exactly. And
yeah.
then, so this leads you to this sort of washed out, minimalist, bleach sort of, I won't call it door. It's not the right word, as you'll see from the next few pictures. But there's a distinct shift in your thinking here, which I think people will find interesting.
Yeah, it's all about simplifying things down and just having those two colors, that one little element. I mean, everyone likes a tree on a hill, you know, or a tree in a field. It goes without saying. But the thing about this shot that's so nice is the symmetry. I mean, so the trees are smack in the middle. You've got two colors that are opposites on the color wheel, and they just sit so nicely together.
Orange,
and it's just a pleasing image to look at. It's got this space, and yeah, I mean, it also talks about how we farm the land and how, you know, we don't leave much left in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do love this sort of look.
And then you get even further with this approach. And I found this was up in Mullowar, wasn't it? Or nearby?
It was Carnamah.
Carnamah, yeah, up there, not
yeah,
north.
So this is an IGA. So we stopped. Nick and I were doing a trip together. He was photographing rodeo
Mullowar Rodeo for my book, yes.
Yeah, and it was a great fun weekend hanging out with cowboys and stuff. But this was an IGA, and the idea of this is I've working on a body of work which is called Unbranded, and it's all about photographing these places that this is obviously an IGA. It's an old one, and it's taking off all the branding and bringing it back to just the colors and the shapes of the architecture, and it's really dodgy. It's a really dodgy, you know, building that was probably made in the, I don't know, what would you call that, 60s, 70s sort of style, or maybe even 80s. And the funny thing, I showed this to an architect. He said, you know, there's actually a lot of architecture that's gone into that building. And I went, really?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went, okay. But I love that. I love the colors, and I love, again, the soft blue sky, the pastels, all the contrast is taken out. And if you saw that shot before, with all the signs and all the, you know, they had posters and specials and, you know, all the things they have on supermarkets. When they're all gone, it just looks so much better.
I think there's another. Oh, this is similar. It's about again that Stephen Shaw angle you're talking about, or Jeffrey Smart. It really shines through in these sorts of images. And this, I hadn't seen this before when you sent these through, and I really enjoy this one. It's got an amazing sense of depth to it. All the perspective is really pressing all those buttons really hard. Like you've got this three-dimensionality going on.
Yeah, well, I have to thank Stuart Westmore for this one. Stuart's probably listening now, sitting back going, "That's my shot. That's my location." But he took me out. He said, I got to Melbourne one time, and we went out shooting in the morning, and he showed me all his favourite spots, and this is one of them. So thank you, Stewie. This is
super wide angle lens again.
Sorry,
very wide angle lens again.
Yes, I think it was the Sigma, the DP0, maybe.
A wide one.
But,
yeah.
But this is the sort of stuff I want to do with the Leica more. Now that I've got the zoom lens, I can actually, because I hate changing lenses.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm happy if I can just.
Question here, and this is a question I asked you the other day. Robert Detman wants to know, why didn't you take the power pole out? And if you look closely, Robert, you'll see there's another one just there. So there's two, but I think it's very deliberate. Is that the case, Christian?
Yeah, I kind of, I think it was to add that extra bit of depth in the shot, because obviously that power pole is a long way away and it looks quite small, but it actually, we all know they're quite big. So that was part of it. I think also the power lines are there, and I didn't want to disrupt. And yeah, I'm a purist, Nick. You know, I don't go taking seaweed off beaches and stuff like that. Yeah, look at something.
Here's another one from Mullowar, I think, up in the north.
Yeah, that's Mullowar. That's one of my favorite all-time images as well. Just simple shapes, colors. You know, you got shadows doing different things. You mentioned that the shadow coming down to the roof points to the bin.
To there, yeah.
And I didn't even notice that until you pointed that out. But this was part of a one-on-one exhibition that I did. It was called Midwest, and I went out and photographed. I came up with 35 images for this exhibition, and it was a real just a test, because I didn't know if people were going to like these images or they're going to respond to them. So I made them one-on-one. That makes it more of an incentive to buy it, and also I didn't jack the price up too much. So they were all and they're all perfectly framed and beautiful, but not too big.
Hmm.
So end up we sold 28 out of the 35.
Really
so
good.
people really liked. They did like this sort of urban banal. So that's why I keep
think
going
that
on.
comes back to the point we were talking about prints on the wall are an entirely different dynamic, if you like, to images on the screen. You know, these images printed in, especially in sets, they look fantastic. They really do, and it's a very different use of photography. Beyond, I think people are too concerned about what they look like on a screen, but you really need to get past that into printing. And I know somebody earlier asked a question about how do you do big prints, and I think the only answer, and you see what you think about this one, Christian, but you need a big file to start with. You know, the bigger the print, the more it stretches the available information, and you end up getting a softer image. So you need to start with 40, 50 plus megapixels to do big prints. I mean, we're talking big prints here, but I mean, there's no other way around it, is there, really?
No, you just need that resolution. And you know, I find that with the gallery, and I was kind of hung up on that for a while. Like when I was with medium format, I had 80 megapixels. I knew that I could, you know, make pretty big prints. And I've got it actually behind me. You can actually see it if I get out of the way. On the wall back there, there's a 3 meter by 3 meter print. You only see part of it hanging on the wall, and that was from a single capture. And you know, that I'd love to make all that size prints because that's just so cool to see. But most people, most people don't buy bigger than 1 meter by 1 meter or 1 meter by 1.5 meters. So, you know, all the cameras that I got now will do that easily. So that's all I concentrate on. So.
Okay, I'm going to go on to a couple of now. We're going on to recent work. This is SL2.
Yeah, that's SL2.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the last few pictures here. So I just want to ask you, really, which is something that we'll talk in more detail, I'm sure, over the next few months. But you're very, very happy with your new SL2. Can you tell us a little bit about why that might be the case?
Well, the first time I used it was when I borrowed one, just to see if I was convinced enough to buy one. And I went down to the beach. It was Canal Rocks, and the sun was going down, and I had the tripod on, and you know, I was on the tripod, and I was taking these shots, you know, doing like 1 second, half a second exposures and stuff with the water moving around as you do your classic sort of seascape shots. And then I thought, oh, that's right. Nick says it's got a 5.5 stop stabilized sensor, so you know, you can hand hold these things at half a second, 1 second, and get usable shots. So I thought, oh, I'm going to give that a try. So I took it off the tripod, and then I was just bouncing around all the rocks, and I was getting myself in these positions that you just couldn't get in with the tripod because it gets in the way. There's nowhere to put the legs. You know, I was only doing this because it was a borrowed camera. It was,
here we go.
It wouldn't do it with mine. So I was, you know, had one leg on one rock, one on the other, and water coming between me, and I was doing these handheld shots. That half a second shots, and I was going, and the rocks were perfectly sharp, but the water was moving, and I was going, wow, that's nuts. And this shot here, this is not a super long exposure, but this is quite a precarious rock to stand on, so I didn't take the tripod up. I just took the camera off and put it over my shoulder, and I could still get the depth of field I wanted. And hand hold it, even at slow shutter speeds, and get the shot that I would never normally be able to get. So
that was this the 16 to 35 on the SL2.
Yes, that one.
Yeah. Because
and you know, we talk about the color being different. This is the classic example of and the clarity of those colors is something.
Well, look at the next one. I think that shows up that difference in color that you were pointing out. This is the 16 to 35 again, I believe, but there is a certain openness to the shadows. It's really hard to articulate, but yeah, hopefully you can see it.
Yeah, I made a 50-inch print of this, and it looks beautiful. It's super sharp, everything from the front to the back. And this wasn't focus stacked; it was a single capture. So, you know, I just focused in different areas and just chose the one that was the sharpest right throughout, and it worked really well. Obviously, a long exposure because there's a little bit of lightning there. That day,
question from Kath Celia. We're talking about the Leica SL2. When I say SL2, I was imagining people would know, but obviously that's not so obvious. So it's the Leica SL2, which is a 47 megapixel full frame mirrorless camera. This basically. If you can see, that's
Oh,
have you got yours there, Christian? So yeah, it's
yeah, my lens is bigger than yours.
it's my workhorse camera, Christian's workhorse camera, and yeah,
Yes.
it's a bit good. So thanks for that, Kath. I tend to make assumptions here. Moving on to so again, this is Dunsborough Away again, SL2 long exposure, I believe.
Yep, shot with that my new Hoya filter, which I was really very impressed with. Yeah, that was Leica SL2, and you know, just awesome, awesome fun. And again, depth of field was the single capture depth of field was right the way through without a problem.
That's really critical. It really is. This one, SL2. This is a cheerful.
Yeah, SL2 night shots. I'd never do night stuff.
That's right.
And here I am now out shooting fireworks, and it's like what? So I mean, this was on a tripod, obviously, but I probably didn't need to be on a tripod. Yeah, so anyone that knows me knows that I hate doing star shots and auroras and all that sort of stuff. And I've been to Iceland twice and Norway twice, and whenever that green stuff comes out in the sky, I'm just like, oh, okay, do we have to? Can we go home now? But of course, you're there on a workshop and everyone's wanting to get these shots, and I've never had a camera that actually works in low light, and now I have. So it's like next time I see an aurora, I'll be taking photographs.
You're all over it. You're all over it.
Yeah, I'll be out there with you, Stu.
Sorry to interrupt. Question from Rachel Dawson. When you're making your big prints, there's a particular paper I think that you choose to use. What would that be?
Yeah, I use the Canson papers. So my favorite is the Canson Rag Photographique, and the reason we like it's a matte sort of art paper. The reason I like it is it's really smooth, but it's also when you frame it under glass, there's no reflection off the print surface, so it reduces the reflections down quite a bit. And if you then put a non-reflective glass on it, some of that really special glass I got these days, it almost looks like there's no glass on it at all. But I still do like a little bit of reflection, but the paper is beautiful. The black's print really nice, and it's just it's just my favorite. We use it for everything. So
good stuff. This shot that I just put up, is this a handheld shot with the SL2 as well?
No, I actually use the tripod because I mean, ultimately you can do it, you get away with it, but sometimes I just don't want to miss the opportunity to get it right. And if you are shooting landscapes properly, you should really still put it on a tripod.
Yeah.
Just to get
I'm glad you said it like that, because I was going to have to say that at some point. It's not an invisible tripod. The stabilizer in the SL2 is astonishing, and it allows you to get shots you couldn't normally get. But if you want to do a shot like this one, a tripod is still a really good idea.
yeah, that's fine. It's all
just
your
craft in the picture. Press a button. This is the last picture, I think. Is this the shot you were talking about? That your first shot with
this wasn't the first shoot, but this was down the track, and this is when I actually had bought my own Leica kit. So this was a 16-35, and the car park is way off in the distance, and so I thought, no, I'm just going to take that camera. I'm not even going to take a tripod. So I took the camera bag and just the lenses I had in the camera, and no tripod. And so this was handheld, and it just blew me away that I could get everything sharp, handheld at that long exposure. And it's kind of a classic sort of landscape that I would have shot in the past. The clouds were there; it's real clouds. I was a little bit disappointed that there's a little bit of a gap on the left-hand side there. It would be nice to fill that in. Again, there's this color palette, Nick. And when you look at this print, look at the file, those rocks especially the rocks in the background there, are really creamy and smooth. There's a kind of there's a sharpness but a smoothness to them as well. So it's kind of nice. It's not grainy or rough.
That's the lenses. It really is. Because which leads me to the last question we'll do before we start to wrap things up a little bit. Matt Stretton, emailed yesterday to ask a question about the difference between the zooms and the primes. Now, I know you've not used we did send you a 35 or 50 mil.
I had a 50 mil.
But he's wondering whether the zooms genuinely replace the primes, or whether there's some trade-off. I'll answer it myself in a minute, but I'd be interested to know what you think about it.
Well, I think there probably would be maybe some difference, but not a great deal, not enough to make it that obvious. And if you know sharpening in post, you can bring back a little bit of that as well. Look, saying that, I would love all the primes. I was just looking at one. I thought, oh look, honey, there's one I could get. Which one was it? What was the one that's about? Was it $19,000?
Oh, the 75 or the 90 mil.
90 mil.
Lux, or the 75 mil Nocti. Yes. They are a little on the expensive side, but jeepers, they're good. I've used the 75, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
I could afford.
I'd like that. I'd like to hold that.
But they are amazing. So my answer to that question, Matt, is that the difference in sharpness between the zooms and the primes is, if you're looking that hard, it's negligible. The zooms are genuinely as sharp as the primes. But what I would say, this is what I say to people who, when I'm out in the field shooting, is that you get less of a distinct look with the zoom lenses. The zoom lenses are your functional get it done tool, but there's less of a distinct style to the look of the image, whereas the primes, they're still technically sharp. There's still, all the technical stuff is identical, but the look of the image will be subtly different. And that's mostly to do with limited depth of field, because you can't, the zooms are 2.8 to 4 and so on, but the primes are f2, or if you use M lenses as well, even wider. So you get that distinct fall off. So if you're going after a look, the primes are your choice. If you're going after functional and sharp and everything, the zooms get the job done. So as a documentary photographer, I tend to use the zooms, but occasionally when I'm doing portraits, I use the prime. So I hope that answers your question. So look, I think we're going to have to wind that up. Sorry, Christian, just go ahead, please.
Saying that, I've got the 90 to 280, and that's probably my favorite lens now, and that is just,
looks a lot bigger, sharp, doesn't it? It's not that big. It's really,
no.
I'll take the lens off. There you go. It's actually quite manageable, isn't it?
Yeah. But I love that lens.
Yeah.
And the drop off of that is just beautiful. I think I'm so happy I got that, because I haven't had a good sort of tele for a while, and that just makes shooting so much more fun. You just, especially from the car window, mate, you don't have to.
Yes, it gets to find some more sheep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, it's the thing that I liked about this was the extra reach, because most of you shooting with 70 to 200s or something like that, but this is 90 to 280, so it gives you almost a 300 mil f4, and it's and stabilized as well, so it helps you with the hand holding as well, which is really good. So when I first got this, I started shooting a lot more with it too, because you can, and there's images that you didn't even look at before because they were too far away, and now you can frame them up and compress the perspective.
And look, I was shooting it, I took it out, just mucking around in the front yard, just shooting flowers and all that sort of stuff, and I was shooting at 1600 ISO, wide open, just to because I wanted to get the shutter speed right up, and seriously, I got all those shots, and there was so little noise in them. I was actually really surprised. Like, wow, actually, I can actually use 1600 all the time.
Available darkness.
With that lens, and I was really impressed, and they're still super sharp and crispy.
So I take it you're happy with your investment.
Yes, yep. I love it. It's great. It's
good to hear.
It's so nice, and it just feels good, because I had mentioned to you that I've got an S1R that I've been playing with, the Lumix. But it doesn't feel the same. The Leica, I know the Leica is more expensive, but it feels like just something you want to use. This sounding a bit like an info commercial, but it's not. I seriously believe that the functionality of the camera and the feel and the way you use it is really, it's a nice experience. It's not you pick it up, it feels like you get what you pay for, and I think that's part of that Leica experience, that feeling. So I'm really in love with just the ease of use now, and the menu system's really easy. That's one thing I like. It's almost actually reminds me of the menu system on my Sigma on the Quattros. It's really simple as well. You've got your menus you go through, but there's not menus within menus within sub menus and all that sort of stuff. It's just it's more minimalist, and really easy to use.
You have to practice the Leica motto, Das Wesentliche, which means the essential. Nothing more, nothing less than you need, nothing more than you need. Just what you need. That's their whole design ethic. So look, Christian, thank you so much for spending the time with us this afternoon. There was some good insights there. I saw a few comments coming up saying there's some gems coming from these guys, which is, thank you very much for these comments. We're very kind of you. So I hope you enjoy that. But I'll ask you one last question before we take last question. I'll ask you a question, then I'll take a couple more questions from our audience. What's next for you? What projects have you coming up on the horizon that you can tell us about that aren't secret?
Yeah, well, I'm going to do more work with Ian Hutch, so the more of the beach murals and stuff like that. So he's got some ideas coming up. So we're going to keep going on that, and I'm going to keep going on my unbranded series of work. So unfortunately, we're all locked down at the moment, so I can't even leave my region. And my region's not known for urban banal; it's more for beautiful landscapes. So I want to get a bit more urban banal stuff going. So hopefully. That'll happen soon, and we can get out and do that. So that's the main thing. But I've put all my studio lights out, and I've started to mess around with that. So I want to create some studio sort of based work of well, I'm not even 100% sure what I'm going to shoot yet. I do want to do some portraits, stuff like that. Just trying different things, because now I've got a camera that can do everything, and that's something that is refreshing. So yeah, but my urban banal still is my favorite stuff. I really, that's where my heart lies. I know not everyone likes it, but it's where I get the most out of that. Probably because I haven't done as much of it. Like I was out doing landscapes this morning, and I said to Jen when we were driving back home, I said, I pull the camera out and I set up the tripod and I just do the same thing. Like, just go through the process. I know how to take a landscape photo, and that's what I do. I said, I need to go out and do something different. I've got to do something different. I've got to do it differently. So I'm working on that. So that's the next big thing, mate.
Good.
Working on doing something differently.
Yeah. I've got to.
At least I'm acknowledging it. Right?
Well, I'm just got a couple of things I just want to mention before we call it quits. So we've answered about 90% of the questions. There's a few that we've gone past, unfortunately, because of time, and now we've lost the context with the picture. So if anybody feels though I've missed out their question and it was really critical, you can send an email into info@leicaacademy.com.au, and I'll do my best to answer those. Or something else that you might be interested in is that we are also doing one-on-one online sessions with people. We can do specific topics one-on-one through a webinar type format, but just one-on-one. And also we're doing portfolio reviews. So myself or a couple of other of our instructors will be doing a portfolio review. So if you need some feedback on your work, if you check out the Academy website, www.leica-academy.com.au, you'll see those in the events list there. So I think we did really well. I was hoping we'd keep it to around an hour. So an hour and 15 is pretty damn good, I reckon. So I'd like to express my thanks deeply to Christian for taking the time. Thanks once again. Most interesting. There may be some events in the future when we're all allowed out of our little hobbit houses. Maybe we were planning on doing a workshop, the two of us together, later in the year in West Australia, but that will have to be postponed probably until 2021, but that will be in our newsletters. So if you haven't got our newsletter, do go to the website and sign up. And next week, before we go, next week we were going to have Jesse Marlowe on to talk about street photography. Unfortunately, unfortunately for us, not so unfortunately for him, he's got a big job has come up which he needs to do in the next week or so. So he's had to pull the pin on our appointment. So I'm going to fill in his slot, put up with me once more, and talk about my Heart of Australia book, which is the exhibition that's on in the Leica gallery in Melbourne at this moment. And it's one of the reasons I was over in WA shooting with Christian in June last year, I think it was. So I'll be talking about that. So it's documentary photography and the stories behind the picture. So please join us again, same time, same place, from Nick Rains at Leica Academy and Christian Fletcher from the Christian Fletcher Gallery in WA. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nick. Thanks.